The southern U.S. was hit by a 1-2 punch this hurricane season, and both storms were record breakers. Irma was the most powerful hurricane ever observed in the open Atlantic, and Harvey dropped the most rainfall ever recorded in the continental U.S.
While the storms were stronger than ever, so too was our response to them. That's the subject of this week's Time magazine cover story, and we're joined by its co-author, Time editor-at-large, Jeffrey Kluger. Jeffrey, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about, I want to go back to 2005 and Hurricane Katrina, which, of course, the damage was estimated, I think, at $151 billion.
Right.
How have things changed in the aftermath of that?
There have been a lot of changes, and I just want to say up front, so much of this reporting came from my co-author on the story, Haley Edwards, who flew into the teeth of the storm and picked up a lot of this knowledge. And what we're learning now is that FEMA and the states have become simultaneously more structured and more nimble. What that means is that every morning during the course of a storm, there are 4 meetings throughout the day in D.C. in which all of the stakeholders in all of the states teleconference in with FEMA. And the question is, what do you need? What's working well? How can we redeploy forces? So FEMA works from the top down. The states, meantime, do their work on the ground, and they're also free to borrow assets from other states, which means police, paramedics, firefighters, anything else they need to get the assets where they have to be.
We saw in 2006 Congress passed the Post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act, and of this you wrote that it took the handcuffs off the agency. How?
Well, because as we all know, in our system of government, there has been for 250 years tension between the feds and the states. When is it okay for the states to come in? In the past, FEMA had to be invited. Now FEMA is free to say, we see where the danger is coming. We are not only going to be there uninvited, but we can pre-deploy. And that was one of the great well-done things this time around, that FEMA had its assets in the state up to a week in advance. So everybody was ready when those storms hit.
Rescue workers, everybody along those lines.
Exactly. That's right.
Among the assets under FEMA's oversight are urban search and rescue teams, which respond to mass emergencies or disasters. How were they deployed here?
They were deployed in a couple of ways. Just locally, there was one 35-member search and rescue team that we followed that was deployed 3 times for 6-hour deployments over the course of 24 hours. They went to especially vulnerable areas, hospitals, nursing homes, and then went into devastated neighborhoods. But they're also part of a national system of 28 such teams with 220 people. So you have a strike force of more than 6,100 professionals who can be moved around the country like chess pieces as needed, with FEMA directing them.
We also saw Governor Rick Scott really out in front of this. He's gotten a lot of praise for how he handled it, the warnings that he gave. How critical was that decision in saving lives? It
was an extremely critical decision, and we had a terrible lesson in 2005 when Hurricane Rita, as we remember, threatened Houston right after Hurricane Katrina laid waste to New Orleans. There was an impromptu evacuation of 2.3 million Houstonians, leading to the greatest case of gridlock in the nation's history, and 100 people died. This time, 7 million people were evacuated out of 20 million Floridians, but it was done right. The southbound lanes on the highways were reversed, so they headed north. There were police and security forces on the side to remove stalled cars. Electronic signage was there to tell people, get off this road, go to another road. It was highly coordinated, and it was also coordinated with the military and the Coast Guard, who were in place to help do their job of controlling.
That's one of the, quickly, Jeffrey, that's one of the toughest decisions, though, because they get to be quite controversial, because some people think, you know, that order needs to be given sooner. Some people obviously don't want to go.
That's right, yeah. And the question is how effectively you can persuade people to go. Now, it helps that Florida, one of the things that makes it vulnerable is the state is as narrow as 80 miles across in the I-75 corridor, and Irma was 600 miles across. So you know you're going to get clobbered.
You're going to get hit
when
like
that is coming in.
Jeffrey Kluger, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.